Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are in the world. This is Gloria White, and I'm coming to you from Utah, USA. Today, we're going to talk about courage and our faith in God. And we're going to talk about King David when he was but a child. And also, we're going to read the Psalm of David, which is Psalm 23. And what have I done with my magnifying glass? Ta-da! I have to have this to see this book. The Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want or lack for anything. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures, or green pastures of tender green grass. He leadeth me beside the still waters, or the waters of rest. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. His cup of blessings. Surely goodness and mercy, or God's loving kindness, shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now, Samuel 1:17. This is the story of David when he was a child, and he guarded his father's sheep. And he also went up and fought and killed Goliath. Now watch how amazing this kid is. The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 17. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shochakah, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Shochakah and Azekah in Ephes-dammim. Okay, not real great with these pronunciations. Never been here, but they have. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched, or camped, by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. They set up their camp ready to do battle. And the Philistine stood on a mountain on the one side, and Israel on a mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits in a span, 9 feet 9 inches tall. And he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed or with a coat of mail, or covered. He had a brass shield, like fish scales, that went over his chest, around his sides, and down his back. And the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass, or about 125 pounds. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs, or like boots, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, was about 15 pounds. And a weaver's beam is pretty good size, because they put all their threads on it, and it has to hold while they're weaving all those threads. That's what he had for a spear. And one bearing a shield went before him. So there was somebody carrying his shield. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are ye come out to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me, and to kill me, then will we be your servants. But if I prevail against him, and kill him, then shall ye be our servants, and serve us. And the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man, that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of the Ephraite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse. And he had 8 sons, and the man went among men, and the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. That was Jesse. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. And the names of his 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and the next unto him was Abinadab, and the third Shema. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days, saying, Come on, who's going to fight me? For 40 days he came out and said this. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn, and 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren, and carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. I want to know how my sons are. Go find out. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with the keeper, and took and went as Jesse commanded him. And he came to the trench, or the place where they were fighting, or the camp, as the host was going forth to the fight, or as the army, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of a carriage, his little cart that he came in, and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have ye seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be, that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel, free from taxes. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men. And Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, imagine your big brother talking to you. And he says, Why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and thy naughtiness of thine heart. For thou art come down that thou might seest the battle. And David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? Is there not a reason for me to be here? Every man standing for God, is what David was thinking. And he turned from him toward another, and spake after the same manner as somebody else. What's going to happen to the guy that kills this giant? And the people answered him again, after the former manner, as the first ones did. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, or reported them to Saul. And he sent for him. He sent for David. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight this Philistine. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep. He's talking about himself. He's his servant to the king Saul of Israel. And there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear. And this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. David said, moreover, had more to say. The Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and the Lord be with thee. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail, or the shield that went over his chest and around his sides and stuff. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed, or started to go, for he had not proved it. He couldn't tell if he could move around in it like he needed to. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off. And he took his staff in his hand, and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had, even in a scrip, like a money bag. And his sling was in his hand. And he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, or he belittled him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog that thou comest to me with staves, with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods, not our God, not David's God. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Then David said to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield. But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the army of Israel, whom whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, or strike thee, and take thine head from thee. And I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. He wasn't dismayed at all. He wasn't backing down. He wasn't turning to run. He was totally unafraid. He knew he was girded with the armor of God. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. Excuse me. And it came to pass, when the Philistines arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hastened and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag, and took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine, and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran, and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. And the men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines, until thou come to the valley and to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way to Shaaraim, even unto Gath, and unto Ekron. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and took spoil from their tents, took their stuff out of their tents, because when David killed Goliath, they all ran away and left everything. And when Saul saw David go forth against the Philistine, he said unto Abner, the captain of the host, Abner, whose son is this youth? And Abner said, As thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell. And the king said, Inquire thou whose son this stripling is, meaning this scrawny little kid. And as David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. And Saul said to him, Whose son art thou, thou young man? And David answered, I am the son of thy servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite. Now, isn't that amazing? What faith David had in the Lord. He trusted in him to save him from a bear and a lion, to give him the strength over these enemies. And he also believed that he would be there to slay this giant. Is there anything in your path that you believe that God cannot slay on your behalf, or give you strength to slay yourself? He hasn't changed. He's always the same. He's always the same. He loves us, and he gives us strength and courage in times when others may faint. But our God doesn't let us faint. As long as we believe on him in the way that David believed. David doubted nothing. And so, if you look at Isaiah 40:31, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. How powerful is that? Now, put that in, tuck it in close around your heart, and think that the faith that David had, how he trusted in the Lord, how the Lord delivered him, how wonderful that was. And that all the men in Israel, none possessed that what David had. None of them. They were all scared to death. They were shaking in their boots. And they'd go down and they'd fight with the Philistine army. But when Goliath showed up, they ran away. Not David. David didn't run away. He told him, "Who is this Philistine that who defieth our God, the living God?" He wasn't going to be put away, shunned, or laughed at. Didn't matter what anybody said. He knew in his heart what he believed. He knew his God. Do you know our God? I do. I know our God. And I trust him with all my heart, with everything that I have. And the most precious thing is my soul. Not this fleshy body, though he will preserve it until he sees fit that it be no longer preserved. But it's David's soul that gave him the strength of a warrior, that made him fearless in the face of this giant, in the face of a lion, in the face of a bear. It was the Spirit of God moving in him. Is God's Spirit moving in you? Do you let all this stuff going on in the world? I mean, do you think it's as powerful as a bear or a lion or even a giant? Don't you think our God can overcome anything? When we believe on him, when we have unwavering faith, when we doubt nothing. Remember when Jesus was walking on the water and there was a storm and Peter was in the ship and it was tossing him here this way and that way? And Jesus told the sea to calm down and the wind to stop. And it did. And Peter saw Jesus. And he didn't know what it was first. And he says, "It's me. It's me, Jesus." And Peter said, "Lord, can I come to you?" And Jesus said, "Come." And Peter walked on the water for just a little bit. And then his faith failed him. And he sank in the water. And Jesus said, "Peter, why didst thou doubt?" Don't doubt. Doubting nothing. Don't let anything shake your faith. Don't let anybody, any words that anyone can say to you, shake the word of God from your heart and from your mind, or his strength. Surround yourself in it. Wrap yourself up in it. It's wonderful. It's just amazing. Our God is so amazing. He's so powerful. There isn't anything that he can't do. And all things are possible through him if you believe. So don't let what's happening in this world shake you. Just brush it off. One day it'll all just be dust. Just dust. Just brush it off of you. Go on. Don't let anything slow you down. Don't let anything stand in your way. Don't let anything get between you and God with your faith. No? That's what I have to say tonight. Be like David. Be like David. What a kid who grew up to be a king. the king of Israel. And he was an awesome king. He was not perfect, but he was a good king. And his son Solomon, when he became king, he asked God, said, Lord, how am I to govern these people? I don't know anything about this. And God said, well, what would you like? And he could have given him anything. He would have given him anything he asked for. And he said, give me the wisdom to rule these people according to you and your word. Can you imagine the look on God's face? Wouldn't he have just been so happy? And he gave him everything. 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 He gave him everything. He gave him the wisdom to rule the people. That was Solomon's request. But he also gave him riches beyond belief. Wives, lots and lots of wives. And Solomon did great until he let one of his wives pull him away from God into worshiping a false idol. And that is when God withdrew. God said he would, and he did. But I want you to focus on David. The kid, David, a child, still a youth, probably about 12 years old or something. Maybe 14, I don't know. Really, there's nothing that I know that could tell me how old David was other than he was a youth. That he killed a bear and a lion. And he said God gave them into his hand. And that he would do the same thing with that Philistine guy. And he did. God loved David. He loved him so much. Saul was the king of the people because they wanted a king. They were afraid of God when he was talking to them. They were getting freaked out. And they said, oh, can we just have a king that's like a man? You know, otherwise we fear we'll die because you're so right in our face and we can't deal with this. They couldn't deal with the power of God. So God gave them a king, the man they chose. Big, tall, good-looking guy who was possessed. But God had plans for David, and he prospered him, and he protected him. And when Saul was taken out of the way, David became the king. Pretty awesome, huh? I love King David. I think he was a good man. I think he loved our Lord. And he accepted his judgments. Because when he was taken with Bathsheba's beauty as she was bathing on the roof, and sent word and had Uriah brought home so that he could sleep with his wife, because David had, and he was afraid, ooh, now what if she has a kid? And then he had him killed. Sent word to send him to the front line so that he would die. And then he took Bathsheba to be his wife. And she was pregnant. And God said, choose. When the child was born, it was born dead. But for the 7 days before that, David laid on his face in the hall, praying to God to forgive him. But God had already set it in action and wasn't going to turn away. And so he did. He took the child. And as soon as the word came to him that the child had died, David rose up off the floor and went about his life like nothing had ever happened. He accepted the punishment that God meted out to him. And when we do wrong and God metes out or measures out his judgment upon us, his correction, because he loves us as his children, then, get up, brush yourself off, and keep going. What's done is done. And start from there and move forward. Just keep moving forward. Keep your faith good and strong. For he loves us so much, it's amazing. Oh, I'm always so amazed by the things that he does in my life. There's just no end to the good that he can do if you are open. You just have to be open, ready, accepting. What does he have for you to do? Ask him when you wake up in the morning, Lord, what do you want me to do today? It'll be like Christmas morning every day you get up. Oh, what's going to happen today, Lord? You don't know. I love you guys. Have a good night.